And I'm all right with that.
No, that's a good way to be. A rank beginner is a very privileged position.
Albeit intimidating for the rank beginner.
Yeah. You just got to learn to love that feeling.
You have to have a good sense of humor.
Boy, I have
humility and being
really
humble.
embraced that feeling in the past 8 months.
That's exactly right. Now you know how I feel every single day.
Okay, so I started recording now.
All right. Well, let's get rocking. We have so much to talk about today. I'm very excited, actually. Meta, do you mind if we give the floor to Kelly first to talk a little bit about the developer retreat agenda, and then we'll go into the developer update?
100%. Go ahead.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thanks for the time. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Foster. I'm one of the PMs on PyroFX, working with the development team, and have helped coordinate the agenda for the developer conference next week. I'm going to throw up a link here in the window. This is to the developer site, and everything I'm going to talk about right now is available there to you if you'd like to take a deeper dive. In our calendar section, there's the program and agenda was recently published this morning, and it's been finalized. And just to quickly talk about you can take a deep dive and look at the specifics of the presentation, but I kind of want to talk about what are the goals of the developer conference, and they're twofold. One is to deliver a track that is focused on the core technology of the RChain platform. And so this would be your opportunity to listen, learn, and interact with the core development team as they present all of the aspects that are going into building this platform. And it'll be really exciting because 2 days prior to this event, the development team will be working very closely together to answer some leftover open questions and really doing some deep dives so that we are very much in sync as we continue running towards Mercury. So what you can expect during those sessions is probably some pretty fresh and new information that's coming out of that pre-conference work that the development team is doing. So that's the RChain core development track. Simultaneously, on both days, there's also a developing on the RChain platform track. And this is truly designed to showcase how, when the platform is available, you can interact with it and develop on it. And we'll also showcase some sessions to help you get started with our node as it stands today, Rolang as it stands today. And so if you are one of those people that have been dipping your toes into the water and you have questions and would like some hands-on support, this is really the place to come. We're super excited that we'll be able to offer live streaming for both of those tracks. So if you're not able to join us in Boulder, really looking forward to you joining us online, either live or in a recorded format. And I think that's it. Greg, is there anything else you want me to talk about?
No, that was really that was concise, to the point, and I think it was good coverage. So I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. No. Are there any questions from anyone? Does anyone have any comments or questions or thoughts about what Kelly just went over?
There's a question, Patrick. The links to the live stream, Christian will be pushing those into the Discord when they're available.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Okay, so now moving on, let's get a technical update. Meta.
Good morning, everyone. So let's see, real focus has been on getting ready for the developer conference. A lot of the developers are working on their presentations, and we are collaborating internally, both on the private portion of the developer conference, where we will be talking in depth about the architecture, not questions around the architecture because that has all been finalized, but really implementation details on how the architecture is going to work. So this is what I like to refer to as the nuts and bolts portion of specifying and getting the work items all clarified. So those are the questions we'll be talking about. Those are the details we'll be focusing on during the private portion. And then also the private portion, as Kelly indicated, really flows into the topics for the public portion, right? So we've got our public presentations that are have a little bit more of a customer-facing flavor, but really the meat of those presentations are the internal specifications for the project. So lots of focus around getting ready for DevCon. To that end, I've been working on the Node 4 release plan that is in review. I'm also specifying Node 5 and Node 6. And with those releases, we start talking about our mini nets, our test nets, and our developer nets. So I believe what we're going to do is we're going to have this internal, I'm going to refer to it as like a code promotion pathway, where we initially start working with our mini nets, where we have 3 nodes, we boot them up, we make sure they can talk to each other. We do this with every night, in an automated fashion. And then we start deploying more and more features to that, and we start testing Casper. And then at some point we get to a level of maturity where we have what we're going to call our public developer net. Right in that developer net, we may be destroying the data in it every few weeks, right? Maybe at the end of every sprint, where we're constantly iterating and improving and testing and learning and deploying new features to that network. And then eventually that dev net is going to graduate into a test net. And then once we get to test net, we're talking about letting the DApp developers and folks with the Reflective and Pythia companies, all of those folks can now start actually developing and deploying their DApps and testing out the functionality of the RChain platform. And my thinking around testnet is we want to have some costing in place. We want the consensus protocol in place. We want to have the concept of bonded validators and bonding and unbonding in place. And once we have those core pieces working, we'll be ready for testnet. And right now it looks like it'll be about node 6 where we'll have that. So June, July timeframe, we're tracking very nicely to those dates. That's a big mouthful. So the Rolang team has started working on their prototype implementation of consensus. As I've communicated, we hope to demonstrate consensus network messages across the network by node 3, which is the next release. We're specifying slashing, bonding, and unbonding. And we're also running some attacks against the simulation to see how the simulation is holding up against those attacks. We're implementing methods in the interpreter. This, again, is functionality that we need within the Rolang language in order to support some of those higher level features such as cryptography and bonding and unbonding by extension. The Node team is focusing on the Node API. We're also focusing on updates in the tuple space to support the blockchain. So we've got to be able to support snapshotting, history, and rollback within the tuple space, right? So when a new block is proposed, the machine has to be able to update its state, which is stored in the tuple space. So Henry is hard at work on getting that specification done so we can present it at the conference. We're also working on, we've got some more community members that are onboarding onto the project. We're very excited to welcome them. We've onboarded 2 community members this week. We've got some preliminary tasks for them to work on, so we welcome them onto the project. The Rosette team is continuing to work on the compiler separation and documentation. So we need documentation of the virtual machine, both for the developer conference as well as for the compiler team to consume, so that they can start planning out their work to compile to opcodes. So really important work being done there. And we've got our compiler warnings fixed in the Rolang and Roscala project, thanks to Abner. He took on that bounty and knocked it out of the park again, nice and quick. So good stuff happening. I'll open it up for questions if there are any.
Meta, that's exciting. I'm always so thrilled about the progress on things and look forward to the dev conference. A question on the Flight to Mercury page, there's a bullet on launch of name registry September 2018. Can you tell us a bit about name registry and how that does or doesn't compare to like the Ethereum name service?
Yeah, so I don't know if Michael Birch is on the line right now, but Michael Birch is working on his presentation where he'll be talking about the name registry. And one of the things that's going to come up is that we will be implementing I'm going to call it a trusted oracle or an internal oracle. It's not an oracle in the same fashion that we've talked about oracles in the past, but in essence, we're going to be performing a DNS lookup. So if someone like Google, say, wants to register the Google name, the public name on via the namespace registry, they'll have to prove that they can own the DNS. They own the DNS registry, and we'll have a service that will look that up and validate them and then give them access to deploy a contract against that name. But no one else will be able to deploy a contract to the name unless they can prove ownership of that public name.
So
Oh, that all sounds good.
Okay.
Ed, when Mike presented the namespace spec some months ago, we talked about this. So now we're getting the specification nailed down so that we have a decent implementation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Terrific. Any other questions?
As always, comprehensive and to the point. I really appreciate it, Meta. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, so I'd love to hear a little bit from Reflective and Pythia. How are things going, guys?
Zooming along. I didn't see Greg's. Oh, there he is. Anyway, very excited to see everybody next week. A lot of updates. We'll be bringing one or two companies. I know Digital Town's CTO is coming, and really looking forward to getting into some deep conversations, because their platform, while it will be pivoting to RChain, should we go forward with them, there's a lot of opportunities to build additional dApps on it. And I'll let Mike speak to that when he's there. So he's really looking forward to getting into some conversations, and again, coming back to gas pricing. We're talking to a couple of new companies. One really interesting one, the healthcare AI space, a little bit more upstream than we usually look at in terms of enterprises. They've got a lot of enterprise customers and are focused on, not trying to reinvent healthcare, but very tangibly foundational things around data sets. So more on that when we uncover them. We're talking to a law firm looking to do some rewrites in the legal areas, supply chain and coffee here in Seattle, working with a couple of other fund-to-funds and different family offices that are interested in looking to onboard them as quickly as we can. So,
it looks like Greg isn't available. I just pinged, or isn't on. I just pinged him.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Good. Awesome. Go for it, Greg.
No, I don't want to interrupt, Lawrence. Keep going, Lawrence. I don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead, Greg. We'll
Okay.
have time to catch up next week.
Let's see. So a few things. So a third of the team is down at the Draper guys, and the Draper University have a big event going on right now. And I just wanted to do a shout out to our very own Greg Meredith. Thank you for coming down there and speaking with those guys and speaking on that panel. Much appreciated. We're digging deeper and forming a relationship with Draper and Draper Dragon in general as well. So more details will come out from that. So Greg, if you want to expand on that at some point on your talk and what you learned from that, but that was a good event, and I know that it's still going through. We also have an event-wise, and I'll get these details out and I'll put them up on Discord, but we have an event coming up in San Francisco on May 3rd on a Thursday that the Berkeley blockchain folks are helping us coordinate. I think that'll be our biggest event that we've had in the Bay Area. So we're looking at a really great attendance, and Greg's going to come down there and speak at that one. We're also hosting something in New York at the Consensus event, and that one happens on the 15th of May. And then we're off to Boston in June as well, probably the first week, and we've got some strong ties into MIT and Harvard in the blockchain groups there. So I'd open it up to the community as well to PM me on any of those cities or places for some other connections that you might want us to reach out to or other companies there. We feel like we've sort of spread ourselves pretty well into the Bay Area, obviously Seattle, New York, and now we're going into Boston. So if there's other places that the community can think of that that is a hotbed for some of the deals that we should be looking at, we certainly welcome that.
Europe.
Yeah, well, we got to go. Yep, we got it. Yeah, I say that half laughingly, but yeah, we're trying. We're getting there as quick as we're moving east, Greg. I guess that's how we're going. So we will slowly and continually go. We've got with the developer conference, I think we've got 3 speaking spots, so you'll hear a lot from us at Reflective. Last I checked, I believe there's 15 companies that we've got coming, totaling somewhere between 30 and 35 folks will be there. So as Lawrence mentioned, they're super excited, as I'm sure his groups are as well, to talk to the community. Regarding deal flow, we just got off our deal flow meeting. We've got 6 new ones in this week that are looking really, really strong. Add that into what we had last week. I believe we've got 18 in the pipe right now that are either at signing in the next day or 2 or far down the path of diligence. So again, more announcements coming there. One interesting thing that we're finding as we're hitting all these different verticals is multiple companies in the same type of vertical. So on the medical side or in voting or real estate or music. So it's interesting to see how we're putting these companies together and how they can help each other, not necessarily on a competitive basis, but and the more on the platform, obviously, the better. And then lastly, we're working really hard to establish this hub here in Seattle. And with Greg's announcement with Kenny last week about what they're doing for a space over in West Seattle, what we've got for our office space down in Pioneer Square. And then I'm working with different government agencies, even local venture capital funds, the academia here in Seattle, and all of the business community for around blockchain and creating as much as we can as far as a community outside of RChain that is going to be focused specifically on blockchain first, and then push it out to the community and into RChain. So that's something that we're trying to replicate, and we would love to do in other cities as well. But more on that later. So that's a summary from Reflective. Any questions, guys, on any of that? All right, then.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was
right.
Both of you, Lawrence and Greg. That was really great news. Good to hear the progress being made. So I did want to expand on the Draper University talk, and maybe in terms of just keeping the flow going a little bit. I'll do that here, and then we need to talk about the board meeting that we held on Friday and some of the outcomes from there, and how that sets up some major initiatives within the cooperative. But I did want to say that I felt like the talk at Draper was very well received, and I was very humbled because there was a snafu around scheduling. I had been told initially that my talk would be on the 9th, and then when they sent me the details to set it up, I discovered it was on the 10th, and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I've got a meeting on the evening on the 10th, and so I can't do that. But I'll just show up for the event on the 9th." So I was there, and they very graciously arranged meetings with Andy Tang, who is very close to Tim Draper, and then gave me a spot to talk in the afternoon or early evening on the 9th. So I was very happy to be able to speak with the crowd, and talk talk about who we are, what we are, how we are, and why we are, and that seemed to go over pretty well with a lot of folks. I had a lot of people approach me after the talk, and the conversation with Andy Tang was also quite illuminating. They are very forward thinking at Draper. One of the things that came up was they're exploring governance to the point of potentially purchasing a small chunk of land, like an island somewhere, and then working with the existing jurisdiction to set up a separate autonomous region, and then have it governed via blockchain style governance, which is was really remarkable. I was talking with Andy and Andy Tang, and David Otto and Steve Carriaga, and I was suggesting that that would be our country. So that, you know, it might be an interesting effort for us to get into in partnership with Draper. So that I was excited about that. One thing I heard, and that's you know, I want to take this up both with Reflective and Pythia, and then this is going to tie into my talk at the developers conference, games and governance. I heard from one of the Draper University blockchain intensive organizers that Facebook is banning all, I guess it's ads around blockchain. So if you attempt to do an advertisement for anything blockchain related, your account is blocked. And that was really a striking. It doesn't. It's not just ICOs. The Draper event is clearly not an ICO. It's just an educational event, and Facebook is banning them. And Tim personally tried several different approaches using alternative language, using symbols inside the language to make it harder to recognize. But there are multiple tiers of censorship going on. So it's not just algorithms that are censoring us. They also have human beings involved in monitoring this to make sure that blockchain ads are censored. So that's really striking from my point of view. I think in the wake of what we've seen from recent congressional testimony, this is another. This is a swing too far on the other side of the pendulum, from my point of view, and for me, really underscores what I've been trying to say for the last decade, which is there need to be publicly owned, publicly operated information utilities that are alternatives to the privately owned information utilities. I think when so much of the world's population depends upon these kinds of information utilities just for basic day-to-day stuff, basic commerce and the like, having them entirely privately owned is a recipe for disaster, and I think we're beginning to see some of that. And so I feel very strongly that we need to accelerate using the RChain platform, which is the first and, to my mind, only publicly owned and operated blockchain. I think we need to use that as a platform for building out these other services. So to that end, I'll be talking a lot about making sure that we have basic communication capabilities covered, chat, email, audio and video interaction or exchange, and a bunch of others. And I'll talk about a different way of thinking about how to organize that space so that we have a clear sense of having coverage of these basic things. And that's very much in alignment with the cooperative's mission statement around creating coordination technologies, right? So RChain is here to create the kind of coordination technologies that will allow us to coordinate at a much in a greatly accelerated and greatly more effective way. And so having this basic infrastructure is also going to be important. We need to make sure that the applications that are building on top of the platform give us coverage for those basic features and functions. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and then just take a moment and see if there's any. I see there's some comments in the chat about some of what I'm saying. Just open it up for discussion. Is there any other thoughts or feelings, impressions from folks?
No, it's well said, Greg, and it's a lot like the open source movement in the early days, right? Let's figure out how to open this, empower the people, give them the technology, and there's profit and other things to be made and built afterwards. We are, I'll reuse it, tilling the soil. And by putting those ideas out there and asking people how to do it, that's the strength that this cooperative brings. if nothing else.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I very much tend to agree with that point of view. Any other folks have a feeling or a thought with respect to this?
Yes, Greg, I have been thinking about this a lot lately. I got an email from Kent Bakke, La Marzocco, where we're getting our espresso machine. And he sent me a long email about some financial thing that was happening in the news and what did I think about it and so on. I had a realization that a lot of guys like him who are fairly sophisticated in running a large business and several businesses are still pretty new to what we're doing with the blockchain and crypto. And we're still in the early adoption stage. So I still get hit with people talking about Silk Road and so on. And I had written in the comments here that marketing is a necessary evil, and someone misunderstood me to be saying that marketing is unimportant. In fact, I think just the opposite. I think marketing is terribly important. It's like having a personality. You wouldn't leave the house without one, regardless of how artificial it might be. I think what it is, I talked with a branding guy this weekend about precisely that. And he said, when it comes to marketing high-tech stuff, you really are smart to make a funnel for this to show up in the regular, I don't know, the conventional world as something everybody can understand, not that just tech people can understand. So the only thing that can really accomplish that short term is marketing. So I believe it's terribly important. And also I think it's a stroke of genius that we are a co-op, because it gives us a grounding, as unwieldy as this can become with all these people. It gives us a grounding in a real community, and it comes off as being somewhat more conventional in a good way and allows people to approach it. So my thought was, once we get a coffee machine there, we might have some crypto chats around the coffee machine with some of the people who run companies, do a video of it, put it out there, ask them to come in and ask their questions and get them answered by whoever happened to be the experts in our crew in answering those questions. So
yeah, I very much like that. I mean, I really like this idea of a fireside chat or a coffee circle chat, but especially to go over these kinds of issues, because I think they're very much at the heart of what's happening, right? But I think the weaponization of Facebook is core to our concerns about living in a democratic society. And then if Facebook swings in the other direction and becomes sort of a platform where there is active censorship, then again, I think there are real central issues here around how we conduct a democratic society. And this gets right to the heart of the co-op's mission, which has to do with sort of radical transparency, radical inclusion, and how we build coordination technologies that support this. And support it in a way that we can take effective action against the kind of things that are, or in response to the kinds of things that are coming down the pipe. So with that, maybe we'll leave the topic, but I really appreciate the engagement on this. So moving on to the the board. So the board had a special meeting on Friday, and so a lot of good things happened. But one of the most important is that we have approved the marketing plan, and so we're setting aside budget for that. And then we had a follow-up meeting yesterday with all 4 organizations. So that's the Co-op, Reflective, Pythia, and Pyrofex. And because all 4 organizations are going to be benefiting from these marketing efforts. And so in the same way that we've looked at the decompositional aspects of decentralization. Now we also we want to take advantage of the compositional aspects of decentralization. So now we have 4 autonomous organizations, and how can they work together to achieve a common aim? And here the common aim is getting the marketing plan rolled out and resourced. And I'm happy to say that there was general agreement, general support for doing this in a coordinated and in a coordinated way and in concert. And so I'm delighted, because I think that's the other thing that we have to demonstrate to the community, is that we know how to work together, and we have to demonstrate what it looks like and what it feels like to be able to work together, and how when we work together, that we can do things that we couldn't do if we were working separately. You know, I mean, it's that old saw, you know, many hands makes light work. And I felt really, really positive about that meeting yesterday. I just wanted to get your read on that, Greg, Lawrence, anyone else who was there.
Yeah, no, I as mentioned before,
and really hopefully tap into some of the younger talent. I mean, one of my serious and significant aims is to go after the young computer scientists, hackers, logicians, mathematicians, anyone who's sort of just getting into the field and has a burning passion for it. We want to get them while they're young, right? This is, as I've said many times before, this is the Dr. Seuss strategy, right? Get them when they're just learning to code, and then it has a major impact on how people think. I know that I was very privileged to have been exposed to the functional community, like things like the Little Lisper, and a lot of that kind of mind shaping was very instrumental for me. And I think that we kind of owe it to the community to do something similar, to help grow the next generation of developers and logicians, mathematicians, and technologists. So, yeah, absolutely, it's really very important. On the flip side, there was an intuition that I had a couple years back that I still think is going to be important and I think this might tie in with some of the comments that Rudy made in terms of outreach. There are a lot of polymaths in the blockchain space, a lot of people who are both artists as well as technologists. The effort that Primavera is making is an example of that. You know, she's got a fine legal and policy mind, is also quite adept at technology, but she's also a sculptor. And her sculptures are quite intriguing in the sense that they have both a blockchain presence as well as a physical presence in the world. And I think it's important for us to begin to reach out to the artistic communities, from a marketing perspective. And then this is something I want to talk to the marketing team about, because it's not something that was as explicit in the plan. Maybe it's more implied, but the genius of Steve Jobs was to make awesome, great news, Christian, fantastic. So I'm sorry about the issue with the live streaming, but I'm really glad that you're headed out to Seattle. But the genius of Steve Jobs was to help people see how computing could be a part of lifestyle. And I think that's something that we really need to talk about, is how RChain and RChain's mission of this sort of next generation of coordination technologies, it is really about lifestyle. It's really about lifestyle choices, and so getting singer-songwriters and sculptors and dance troupes and actors and mimes involved in telling the RChain story, I think is going to be really critical to the adoption of the platform. And so that's another piece of the puzzle that I think we have to begin to support is, how to support these communities, these artistic communities, in telling the RChain story, what it means to them. And there, I don't think that consistency of message is as important as diversity of message. I think it's actually more interesting. Like if you think about it like a game, or think about it like a novel or a television series, right? World building 101 is the diversity of detail, right? That there are these layers upon layers of narrative and detail, so that people might begin thinking about RChain as this, and as they dig a little deeper, they realize, oh no, it's more like this. And as they dig a little deeper, they realize, oh no, it's more like this. And so that the kind of mystery that continues to draw people in, I think, is very, very much about how we draw. Sorry, I just saw Rao's comments. So I think it's very, very much about how we can approach the market, maybe who aren't as technical, and also attract the more of those polymaths who are technical as well as artistic. So I think that's going to be an important effort going forward. And yes, so I really, really think that we should be doing a version of Rawhide, using a Rolang instead of Roland. Rolang, keep those contracts rolling. RChain. So yeah, I think that's going to be that's something that we should have fun with. So that's kind of all I got, unless there's, yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's kind of all I got, unless there are any other questions or comments from the community at this time.
I guess I would just mention that Dan Connolly's done an awesome job with the bounty reward system, and it's now got a nice web interface for collaboratively setting budgets and giving rewards, and it's decentralized. It's just awesome, and he's gone further with it, developing trust factors. And if we look at all of the GitHub users, the RChain GitHub users, we can see that we have levels of connections by their activity on GitHub and the bounty system. And we can see myself over here, and my trust network. It's a start, but it's really pretty. I just thought I'd like to let you see it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really, really good. I appreciate that very much.
I've also a small update.
Oh yeah.
I've contacted, Peter Harris has contacted me about the bounty system. And I think we are going to cooperate on that.
Yay, that's great news. That's very, very good. I'm excited about that. Good. Any other updates from the community, or any other topics we want to touch on, or do we want to yield back the time? Going once. Going twice. Oh, yeah. No, okay. Sold to the silence.
Just remind people the member meeting follows this meeting in HJ's room.
Okay. Talk to you guys next week, and see a bunch of you at the weekend.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
See ya. Bye all.